That intro looks cheaper every time I watch it, but I'm not making a new one. Welcome back to TMG's The Rundown. I am Aaron Knoll. This is a continuation of the same premise from the last video, which is we're doing the worst of 2024. So we have to talk about the best of 2024. You know, if the Razzies exist, so must the Oscars. I think that's the order that happened in. Don't correct me. But yeah, we're going into the best of 2024, a year that I I'm just gonna get ahead of it. I feel like the talk on the internet was that like this was a substantially weaker year than the last few years. And I disagree with that sentiment, but in a very particular way. Before we go too deep into that, let me introduce my co-host. I am joined by someone. So a couple of years ago, we did a Star Wars video together, and then the intention was always like, I want to do more of this. And then I didn't do anything for a year. So that never happened. But I'm happy to have him back with me. A good actual friend of mine, Tyler Franklin. And by the way, that is no offense to anyone I'm friends with on here. Just I actually know him. So, you know, real friend. Tyler, how's it going, man?
Good. How about you?
Good, good. I'm excited to talk about this. So yeah, just to kind of start off the show with a little bit of discussion before we get into the movies, I want to ask you about that point, which is like online, I feel like the discussion has been that 2024 is this like substantially worse year than the last couple of years that we've had. Now, as we kind of got into and we'll get into in part two in the worst films of the year, there were some really, really bad films this year. And studios, specifically Sony Pictures, legendarily bad year to be Sony Pictures, legendarily bad year to be Lionsgate. They had a real bad year. But I don't think this year was actually that much worse, because when you look at like this top 22 list, I feel like a lot of these films are really, really, really great. It's that like there's less of that next tier down of like movies that I gave like an 8.5 to or an 8 out of 10 to. There's less of those than I think in years past, but the great films I still think were great. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think a lot of the times, like the sentiment online is just like everything's a remake, everything's a sequel, everything's a reboot, and that's really not that true. Like if you seek out the movies that aren't those things, you can really find a lot of good film out there. And I think 2024 was an excellent year in film. I think I saw just over 100 releases or so,
Mhm.
and compared to 2023, I think that I had even more of those middle of the road to better films. And then on top of that, I think some of the films that I loved even more than last year. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really thought that this was a strong year for film, and that may not be shown in some aspects, but like when it comes to the Oscar nominations, I don't agree with a lot of the stuff, and I think there's a lot of other worthy films, but
Yes.
yeah, that's what I got
We're
to say.
looking at you, Amelia.
Yeah, exactly. Amelia is 104 out of my 105. The only movie that it edged out was the Garfield movie, which I was just that was awful.
I guess a reference to the past video and spoiler alert for part two. Both of those were on my worst list, but not that low.
I hated them. One out of
I Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, at this point, even like in the episode, because Amelia Perez was like 21 or something like that, and like even in there, I'm like, I can see like there's so much wrong with this, but I can see the merit in certain instances of filmmaking where Jacques Audiard like has good filmmaking technique with the movie. Like he is a good director. And then he opens his mouth, and then Carla hops on Twitter, and it's like, why am I fighting this battle? Just that it's not a good movie.
See, I disagree. I
Um,
thought a lot of the technical elements were bad too. I was just like,
oh,
this
that's fair.
guy.
Yeah.
I felt like inconsistent. It was just all over. It felt like a fever dream. Like it was. Like the musical
It does.
sequences, I thought were legitimately bad. Like
I agree.
all of the
That I
singing
agree
was
with.
bad. There wasn't good choreography. The lyrics were dumb, especially with the English ones. But like, I can't really speak to the Spanish because I'm watching a subbed version. But
Like the kindest thing I could say about the movie is like on a musical sonic level, the two that were nominated were probably the best.
I
I
don't
can't
like.
say much, but
I just
but we're
so
here to talk about good movies,
yes,
including potentially other nominees alongside Amelia Perez, because some of those films, I'd say most of those films were worthy of the love they got. So let's go ahead and get into it. The way the show works today, we are going to be doing part one of the list. The next episode, we'll be doing part two. So we're going to be covering our 22 through our number 12. So Tyler will go ahead and start at my prompting. We're going to do his 22 through 19 first, then we'll do mine, then we'll go back to him for 18 through 15, and then we'll do mine, and then we will trade one apiece for our final three films of the video, which would be 14, 13, and 12. There won't be a building of the list at the end of this video, but I will be keeping notes of what films we have crossover on just for the sake of the second half, where we put together the grander list of 22 films. With that said, though, Tyler, you ready to get into it?
yeah. I did just want to preface it by saying a lot of the Oscar nominees I did not see yet. Like I haven't seen The Brutalist. I
Fair.
haven't seen I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, Conclave, even though it's on streaming, a complete unknown. I haven't gotten to yet, but I have seen some others. So I'm excited to talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fair. I'm lucky that I'm in the position where I have gotten to see most of those at this point, but that's just because I actively like once I heard the buzz, I actively sought to, and most of the ones that caught the buzz were correct this year. Uh, the only two films of that list that I haven't seen are Nickel Boys and I'm Still Here, and that's only because I opted to buy the AMC theater thing, the Oscars Day thing, because they had, as we'll get into later, the other two movies that are playing alongside those two on that day were two of my favorites of the Oscar set. So I was like, I can rewatch two movies and I can watch two movies. Yeah, I'll just do that, and then I don't have to make time to go watch Nichols Boys on a Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, because the screenings were slim.
Dude, yeah, you kidding me? I'm shocked I'm Still Here got as much love in terms of release as it did, and I think that's only because it got a Best Picture nom.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Uh, anyways, are you ready?
Yes.
All right, man. So go ahead and start me off. What is your number 22?
Number 22 is Snack Shack, directed
All
by
right, go ahead.
Adam Reimier. I'm not sure if that's how you say it.
Sounds
But
right.
he's also the director of Dinner in America, which I
Hmm.
watched after Snack Shack. But I saw so much buzz online about Dinner in America. So I ended up loving that movie more than Snack Shack, but we're here to talk about Snack Shack. Snack Shack is about a summer where two best friends are desperate to make money because they're kind of like hustlers, like they're like always trying to make a quick buck, and they end up bidding on their town's pool concession stand, like the Snack Shack, and they end up overbidding on it because someone like screws them over, and they think it's worth way more than it actually is. But like through a lot of determination, they end up really successful, and it's about like their friendship and their relationship with a girl that just moved into town, and how they're both pining after this girl, and um, it's kind of, I would say, like tonally similar to one of my favorite movies, Superbad. It's got that same type of humor, and one of the stars is Gabriel LaBelle from The
Yes.
Fablemans, so he's always excellent in everything that he's seen. I'm still dying to see Saturday Night, which he starred in. But the
I'm,
real
I'm
lead
glad
of
you
the
said
film,
that. I'll keep it spoiler free.
yeah, the real leader of the film is Connor Sherry, and it's kind of like how he doesn't, feel like he's as cool as Gabriel Bell's character, and I don't want to like get into the plot, what happens and everything, but just I was really blown away with it. I thought like the comedy, like I think it's rare nowadays to get like a truly funny, consistently the whole way through, well written comedy. I think it's been a lost art form, unfortunately, due to um, streaming, existing,
Yes.
and the the film landscape has changed where these types of films don't get financed anymore. Because before, you'd make a small comedy, it'd have a decent return at the box office, and then after that, it would go to home release, and it would make a ton more on DVD sales or
Hmm.
VHS sales or whatever you have it. But nowadays, that's not the same case. Blu-rays and 4K, we don't sell enough to make up for the cost of production, and movies get dumped on streaming. They just they attach big stars to the movies and just expect people to watch them, and it's not necessarily. And like there's just a few movies, even in 2025 so far, that I saw that I kind of enjoy when it comes to comedies, but not as good as this so far. And I
Yeah,
think it's
like
the one that everyone should definitely check out.
oh, I feel bad that I forget the name because I actually really liked it. What was the Kiki Palmer one that just came out?
Oh, yeah, one of them days,
One of them days.
right?
Like the buzz around that movie was like, oh, it gets a surprise hit. It didn't even really do that well, but compared to what comedies do now, it was successful. And I think
Yeah,
that's a shame because that one was really funny. I enjoyed that one a lot. Yeah, it's sad. Like I feel like people have forgotten that you can go to a movie theater just with the goal of laughing and enjoying what you're watching. And that's okay. Like it
yeah,
doesn't have to necessarily be something deeper. It doesn't have to have another element. It can just be a funny movie that's good. I mean, shit, in the 2010s when we were working at a movie theater, they were putting stand up in theaters. Like that
yeah,
wasn't that long ago, and now we're at a point where like comedies can barely make it into a theater. Um, this movie is actually so I had a small handful of movies that I had rented out of sheer interest, like on Amazon, that I just didn't have time to get to. This is one of them because my sister actually saw it and she came out of it saying it was really good. So I will be watching this in the near future. I just didn't get to it before we were recording. But I've heard nothing but good things. And yeah, you're right. Gabriel LaBelle, as long as he makes correct career choices and doesn't hire Ariana DeBose's agent, I think he has a great chance at picking up some good work and continuing. Yeah, sorry, Ariana. It's easy to take shots, but you see Love
yeah.
Hurts?
Oh, I have not seen it yet. Was it not good?
Oh, no,
No.
no.
I don't know. I think wasn't she the one that like had that like musical presentation at an award show and everyone made fun of her, or is that somebody else?
Yeah, she's
I think
talented,
that
but
did more damage to her career than anything else.
what's your number 21?
21 is My Old Ass. You seen that one?
That is a punt. We're going to come back to that one later.
Okay, okay.
That is on my
Let
list.
me
We'll come back to
see.
that. All right, so then
And
what's
then
your
I
20?
have above that Lisa Frankenstein's my 20.
Okay.
Yeah, directed
This one I
by
did see,
Zelda
but
Williams.
yes, yeah, her debut, right?
Yes, yeah, it was
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
daughter of Robin Williams. For those who didn't know, but it's like a 1980s rom com, comedy horror. Not really like scary, but when thematically, it's about
Yeah,
Catherine Newton stars as. I think her name is Lisa. I'm assuming. I forget. It's been a second since I've seen the
it is.
movie,
Yeah.
but she's an outcast in school. She has this. She lives with her sister, who's kind of a popular girl, and she's more of a downer, weirdo. Especially like this type of person in the 80s is like bullied and looked down on, where someone like Lisa today probably would be considered cool. But back then it wasn't, and she ends up like I think she like falls in love with this guy who's already dead, and she's like
Hmm.
visiting his gravestone, right? And ends up resurrecting him by you know putting him in a tanning bed. And it's just it's just goofy. It's written by who is it
Diablo Cody.
Diablo Cody, yeah, who did Jennifer's Body. I say Megan, Megan Fox, Jennifer's Body, which is like a cult classic at this point. And then Lisa Frankenstein didn't get the same, kind of. I think I had like a very small, return at the box office. Not a lot of many people saw it, but um, I think it's gonna become cult classic status after a few years because when I saw
Yeah, I
Jennifer's
agree.
Body in high school, it was marketed as, oh, this movie has Megan Fox in it, she's gonna be all hot and stuff. Like it was kind of like marketed towards guys, and then like the movie was not for guys at all. It was like more of something for the girls and the gays, and um, eventually when we rewatched it, I ended up enjoying it more because I wasn't like a horny 16-year-old or whatever. Like, but
Yeah,
I think
your
that Lisa
your favorite
Frankenstein
scene
is
wasn't the one where
eventually
Megan
gonna.
Fox kisses Amanda Seyfried.
um, but I think Lisa Frankenstein is just like a lot of fun, and it's like I don't know. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars because I just loved it so much, and I just didn't expect to. I think I just loved Catherine Newton. Like originally, I didn't think I loved Catherine Newton all that much, but after the Happy Death Day movies and this and a couple other things, she's just so good in it. And then Colt Sprouse is the co-lead. He plays the Frankenstein character, and
Mm.
he doesn't talk. So that's kind of a benefit to the movie because I'm not trying to say Cole Sprouse is a bad actor, but like they're not. He's from like Sweet Life. He's from the Riverdale, so he's not like the best actor, especially compared to to Catherine Newton. But it also has a good supporting cast, and it's very enjoyable. So definitely would recommend checking it out.
Yeah, this one I actually did go see in a theater, just because it looked interesting. I came out 50-50 on it, which honestly is kind of how I feel about Jennifer's Body as well. For me, the way that Diablo Cody kind of balances the horror with the comedy doesn't work for me. Um, but certainly, I actually thought Zelda Williams did a really good job directing it, and I look forward to seeing what she comes up with next. I know she's also said that she was writing screenplays herself and she just opted to go with this concept as a debut, but she also wants to try writing, and I'd be very curious to see what she comes up with. Yeah, Cole Sprouse to me is the interesting one walking out of this because you're right. Like he's a Disney Channel kid, and he's not a Disney Channel kid that went on to have Zendaya's career. Like he's had a steady career, but not like anything to that height. And this is easily the most interesting performance I think I've seen him give, and he does pull it off. He does something that is very tough, which is delivering a performance where you can connect with a character without the dialogue. Um, I agree with you. I think Catherine Newton's very good in the film. I don't have the actress's name offhand, but the sister I thought was also a great character. Like that trio at the center, I thought did a really great job. It was just kind of the tone of the surrounding stuff was something that didn't really click with me. Um, but yeah, definitely well made enough that I look forward to seeing what Zelda Williams has next. And I absolutely agree with you that I think that this will, especially in the way that like the mix of streaming and then TikTok sort of purporting films at times, I think this can absolutely find an audience even quicker than maybe Jennifer's Body did of people where this is just made for them and for their tastes. And I hope they find it because, yeah, this movie didn't do well at all. I saw it opening weekend, and there may have been
Yeah,
like less than 10 people, and three of them were me and my siblings. Like, yeah, it didn't do well.
yeah. I watched it at home, so
Yeah, but it's perfectly good for that as well. Like, I think it can be like a fun streaming movie to just like pop on the background for fun. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, all right. So then, what's your number
It's
19?
on Peacock. Check it out. Number
Peak.
19 is a documentary. It is called
Okay.
Daughters, directed by Angela Patton and Natalie Ray. It focuses on four daughters and their four fathers. Their fathers are incarcerated in a Washington, D.C. Prison, and they are going through the process of the program for the father daughter dance that the prison conducts. And it just like follows these four growers and their fathers, and they talk about their stories and their relationships and the conflict that comes with having someone that you care about, or maybe someone you've never even met, or someone that means so much to you and that has done something wrong deemed by the state. Um, and how do you navigate that kind of relationship with someone who's committed a crime, but it obviously is still your father? It's very complicated. And as someone that had I was born when my father was in prison, so I didn't meet
Mm.
him until I was 7 years old. Don't have this type of opportunity um, that these girls had to connect with their father. It was very touching, and I ended up watching it twice. I watched it by myself, and then I watched it again with my mom. And it was just very emotional, and it was really well made. It looks, I don't know if it was shot on film. I think it was, but it's really gorgeous. Like, it has some of the best cinematography, especially for a documentary of the year. And it's on Netflix, so it's easily accessible, and it's not too long. So I know a lot of people prefer their docu series, but I much prefer just a regular documentary, 90 to 120 minutes, in and out, versus drawing out something over 6, 8, 10 episodes when it's not that there's not
Yeah,
that much
and
material, and it's kind of,
Netflix is the worst with that.
yeah. So I was excited that Netflix wasn't doing it with something like this, because this would have been, you know, I don't know, not as restrained. And it's in the end, you think certain things are going to happen. They do a time jump to see where people are at, and it's quite emotional and sad. So I definitely recommend.
Mm. Yeah, looking it up now, I remember hearing about this from Sundance last year because that's where it premiered. I remember hearing about it. I like documentaries are they're the one kind of art form in filmmaking that I still just don't regularly gravitate to or check out. Because at this point I pretty much have everything else down. I think this year more than any other year was the year where I saw the most foreign language films. Like I whatever like just as a kid, like you don't necessarily gravitate to like I'm gonna watch the film that I can't understand, but like now the ones that release, I see them, and there's some great ones. And yeah, documentary is that one last art form in film where like I don't gravitate to it unless it has like a really really catchy hook to it or something that makes it stand out. And the thing is, there's no real reason for it outside of it's just not what I gravitate to. So honestly, I should do an actively better job at trying to watch them because over the years, the few that I have watched are incredible. And I don't even mean like the celebrity driven ones. Like I heard Still was excellent. I heard Superman was excellent. But like Fleet a couple of years ago was one that actually made my top 10 for that year. Like that's a really really well made documentary, then done through this animation styling. Um, but yeah, it's the one art form left in film that I don't think I've given the due credit to. And I should change that because if I can acknowledge that there's a problem, I should change it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of reverse for me, because I don't watch too much international. Like, I think a part of it is because I do tend to watch, sometimes movies while I work. So something like
Okay.
a
Yeah.
documentary is a little bit easier to catch up with. You don't have to pay attention. You
Yes.
don't have to read subtitles. Um, so, and then, I watch movies pretty late at night. I don't want to fall asleep. So it's like, not saying that they're boring, but I just mean, like, I have
No, no,
to
no. But you're.
actively pay attention to, like,
Uh
read
huh.
while I watch the movies. Um, but there is an international, there's a foreign language film on my list. It's going to be in the next video,
Mm,
um, but yeah, I think I have more of appreciation for documentaries, especially after we required to take the documentary course in school for the film
okay.
program. So, like, I saw a lot of
Yeah,
great
you
ones
you
back
can
then.
appreciate what they have to do.
Yeah, and then but you mentioned Still and Superman. They're both really good. They both made me
Yeah.
cry, but they're nothing like Daughters. Like, this is like a really well made film. Like, stands apart from like a celebrity documentary. Um,
Mm,
and it's that, like, those are more like talking head pieces. You know what I mean? where they
Right.
have they interview multiple people and they kind of just like walk you through someone's life. Where this is more, I feel like, intimate. So just really well done,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
excellent.
All right. Well, check it out, especially because it is on Netflix. It's really easily accessible. So if it interests you guys, go check it out. With that said, we'll move on to my list. And I know just because we discussed it beforehand, these first couple are going to be punts to later in the list. So if any other films come up, just let me know as well. But my number 22 is Challengers.
Yep, that's my number 2.
All right. So we're going to sit on that. And then you don't have to give the number away. Just tell me to wait.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Now, and then my next one is Wicked, which is also going to be one that we'll wait on.
Yeah.
All right, which then brings me to my number 20, which is Flow.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't checked this out yet.
So this movie is very, very good. And actually, frankly, all the animated features. I've seen all 5 nominated features this year, and for the first time in a while, genuinely, I think the 5 films that are nominated are like the 5 films that are worthy. There was one other film I saw this year animated that is good enough that it could have been in the mix, but I don't think Netflix gave it any kind of theatrical distribution, so it wouldn't have been eligible anyways. Um, if anyone's not seen it, it's called The Imaginary. It's a anime film, kind of like a Studio Ghibli-ish type movie, and it's basically the premise of If, but better. So if you liked If, or if you hated If, go watch go watch Imaginary on Netflix. But The Imaginary. Don't watch Imaginary, the horror film, because that movie is not good.
I liked it. I liked it.
You know what's funny? It's on the worst list video, and even he had something positive to say just because it's so dumb fun.
It's bonkers.
But Flow it's a very, very simple story. It's I don't even know how you would describe it. I guess it's an allegory for global warming, but in the movie it plays almost more like a Noah's Ark situation where it's just like the Earth is flooding, and we follow this group of animals that sort of come together on this boat to survive this world flooding situation. It's told, the camera perspective in this is this really interesting, like almost like over the shoulder type thing for a lot of the movie, as you are kind of literally following the animals. There's no dialogue because it's all animals. It's actual, the directors got actual animals to make the animal sounds that went into the movie. I think with the exception of like there's like a capybara or something in the movie. They're like, we couldn't find one of those legally, but everything else had an actual animal that they made the voice of in the movie. Um, and it's just this really simple, cute story that does have a great message to it. And I think for what it is, it really does a good job at getting you invested in the survival of these animals and making you care about them wanting to stick around. Um, it's like honestly, the biggest weakness for the film is the wild robot exists. And I think the wild robot, as we'll get to, at least for me later in this video, touches on a lot of the same concepts and themes as Flow. And because it's not restrained to no dialogue, I think it can explore those themes better and deeper. And I really enjoyed that film, as we'll get to later. So Flow is a really, really good movie. And if it does kind of pull the upset and walk away with the win, similar to last year, where I think a lot of people would have said Miyazaki upsetting Spider-Verse was an upset, but it's still a worthy one. I would say Flow is a worthy winner. Um, I still think it'll be the Wild Robot, but Flow's definitely worthy of it. And I believe, I want to fact check myself, but I believe it just got distribution on Max. So it's now as
Yeah,
widely available
it
as it's
is.
ever been.
Yes. Yeah, I saw it last night on there.
Okay, yeah. So it's as widely available as it's ever been. So go check it out. Did you? Oh, so you just said you've seen it. Okay.
Oh no, I meant like I saw it on Max. I
Oh,
didn't
you saw it
review it yet.
physically on there. Okay, yeah, yeah. Yeah, no. So
Yeah,
it's very, very good. All right, so then we'll go on to my
I'll
number
definitely check it
19,
out.
and this is very possibly the most buried film on this list. I have no idea if it's even actually. I'll Google it now just to see if it is out anywhere. Um, yeah, like okay, so it's not. So it had like a week, maybe 2 week long release in like December into January. It's not out on streaming or digital rental anywhere, but when it does come out, I would recommend people checking this out. It's a movie called Los Freakies. Um, so this next sentence will get people more interested than they were before. It is the follow-up from the directors of The Peanut Butter Falcon, which was a movie a couple of years ago that kind of a lot of people sort of tapped into and really, really enjoyed. So it's written and directed by them, but it's also produced and had creative involvement from Phil Lord and Chris Miller. So there's a lot of good creative minds that went into making this movie. And what it is it's set in the 90s in Cuba, and it's centered around a group of teenagers that, and this is a real thing if you've never heard of this, these teenagers purposefully infected themselves with HIV because being sent away in Cuba to an HIV camp to be kept away from the general public was actually a better way to live in 90s Cuba than living as a free citizen in 90s Cuba. And so these teenagers who couldn't escape, by way of going to Miami would infect themselves with HIV so they would be sent to a better place to live. And even if they acknowledge that they're going to die eventually, it is better to live this way than it is to live the other way. But our protagonist in the movie is a younger brother of someone who does this to themselves, except he doesn't have the like guts, I guess you would say, to go through with it. So he convinces a doctor to lie for him. And so he winds up at this camp claiming that he has HIV when he really doesn't. And what the movie does is it shows you the horror of like this scenario. Because I mean, obviously, that is literally a life or death choice, and you are making the most extreme decision to go through with this. But it also plays into the guilt that takes over when you are the one person that's guaranteed not to die at this place of people that's going to die. There's, a thing about the beauty of life and the friendships that are formed when you're in this situation. Um, it's a really, really, really interesting film. So funny enough, I feel like I was one of the few people who didn't see Peanut Butter Falcon back in, I think it was 2019 was when it came out. I didn't get to it, and it was just not on my radar to ever get back around to it. I actually didn't even know these guys made it when I went into it. I went into this because I saw Lord and Miller produced it, and I'm pretty much sold on anything they make because I feel like they misstep very rarely, even as producers. And once I learned who made this, I was kind of like, oh, I get it. Because if Peanut Butter Falcon was even half as good as this, and based on the reception, I'd imagine maybe it's even better than this was. Okay, I get why people were really, really into that movie. And yeah, and this movie, it's also interestingly enough, for a movie that's written, produced, and directed by a collective of four white guys, it's a Spanish language film that is seemingly, compared to other things this year, really, really respectful of the culture and the language. With the exception of Hitman's Adria Ayorna, everyone in this movie is a local Cuban actor. She's the only like face you would recognize, and that's probably more for financing reasons than anything else. Um, yeah, it's really, really well acted. It's really well written, and the one thing the movie does is it does a great job at finding the humor in such a sad situation, which I think this needs. If this movie is just deadly serious the whole time, a la like Requiem for a Dream, then no one would want to watch this. But being able to find the humor and the levity in it, I think makes it a really enjoyable film. So I definitely recommend it. It's a lot of fun. No, it's not fun. That's not the right word, but it's about
Definitely
age.
intriguing.
But
Yeah.
But
Is
it's
movie not age?
very,
Never
very
thought.
good. And like I said, its release has been buried for some weird reason. So it once it finally gets somewhere, go check it out. All right. So then we'll head back over to you, sir, for your number 18. What is it?
My number 18 is a film called We Grown Now, directed
Okay.
by Manal Beg. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but um, it is about a pair of young black best friends. Um, they are they live in Chicago in the '90s, specifically Cabrini Green, which uh, I most notably recognize from the Candyman movies. Um,
Yes.
but it's like a project in Chicago, and it's really like what I described in my review as like a celebration of Black joy, and what it's like to live in a community filled with people that look just like you, and you can celebrate that. And also, what's her name? Journey Smollett is in it, and she's really good. It's just about like the struggles of this one family, and them trying to get through some hardships. And her son has this like unbreakable bond with his best friend, and I don't want to spoil the movie or anything, but I just really touched me. I thought it was really good. I watched it completely alone in the movie theater. There was nobody else in there. But
Yeah.
it's on Netflix now, so anyone that has Netflix should check this one out. I think it's really good time. Or not a good time, but like a really well-made movie. The cinematography is also very good in this. Like I said from my last movie, but
Mm.
yeah, it's good.
Yeah, this was another one that unfortunately I first heard about it through following festivals. This one was at TIFF in 2023, and then eventually it got released this year, but it kind of just I feel like it came and went really really quickly. Um
Yeah,
so yeah, I recognized the title. I remember seeing the poster, but I couldn't have told you much outside of it. But yeah, good to know. Another great small film if you guys haven't gotten to it. And you said where is it streaming?
Netflix.
Netflix? Okay, awesome. Everyone has
Yeah,
Netflix. We all know you pay for it or you have your friends. So
$25 a month.
might
Crazy.
as well. They're gonna start packaging with cable next. What's your 17?
Wicked.
Wicked? Okay, gotcha. The punch from earlier. Go ahead.
So I uh honestly a little disappointed by Wicked just because of how much people were hyping it up, but I still ended up loving it. Like it's it's rare that we get such an well executed musical, and there was so much effort put into that movie. I did see, Wicked on Broadway when I was in New York on vacation, and I was blown away by the Broadway musical. I thought it was amazing. And then when this came out, I was a little bit skeptical, and I think part of that had to do with um, Ariana Grande. And once I started
Yeah.
watching the movie, that worry kind of just went away, because she's so excellent in it, and I did not expect that at all. Obviously, Cynthia Erivo is also excellent. She brings
Yes.
such an emotional depth to this film as a black actress playing Elphaba, that doesn't hit as hard when it's a white actress, in my opinion. Um,
Yeah.
because obviously it's about discrimination and rumors and stereotypes,
And
and
I was gonna say I've not even seen the original stage play, but I know enough about it to know that that's not something that's not subtext that's just there for the film. That's always been there. And so yeah,
yeah,
especially I think not this necessarily plays into it, but like if you've been following Cynthia Erivo, even just in her film career, like she's played Harriet Tubman, she's been somebody that has been at the front of like black actors and actresses in Hollywood getting more and more important roles over the years. So she both earned this opportunity, but also takes it and performs it excellently.
yeah, and she makes it her own too. She is like, I feel like on Broadway, I mean, I haven't seen all the different actresses, like, but they're all aspiring to be the same version of Elphaba. Whereas I think Cynthia Erivo's character is unique, and she makes it her own. And I think what's so great about Wicked, beyond the acting, beyond the fantastic singing, is the production itself. It's rare nowadays for a studio to put so much money and time and effort into production design and into the visual effects, and polishing those visual effects. Um, like with the opening shot where they're showing Munchkin Land, and you see
Mm.
the fields and fields of tulips. Um, the production designer, same production designer as Interstellar, who planted acres and acres of corn, for that film,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
decided, hey, we're gonna do the same thing with Wicked, and we're gonna plant 9 million tulips, and they did it. And not sure not every tulip on screen is real, but when those kids are running through the tulips in that opening scene, everything around them is real. The productions, the sets of Munchkin Land is real. The sets, uh, of what's it called? Shiz is the school?
Yes. Yeah. Shiz
Um,
University.
that that's all real. When they go to the Emerald City, is that what it's called? It's
Hmm.
all real, and it looks beautiful. And I think some of the criticism, when it came to the film, was it was kind of muted, when it came to the cinematography, and it just seemed like to be a stylistic choice. I do think that if they had embraced the colors and made it look more Technicolor, it kind of would have looked a little bit too gaudy, and it would have popped too much. And I don't think that was what they were trying to do. So I kind of like the way it looked, but like the production design was amazing. The costumes were amazing. The singing, the choreography, it was all fantastic. And then even the visual effects, they got a visual effects nomination at the Oscars,
Yeah.
because of they have the set extensions that just looked actually real compared to a lot of other high intense visual effects films. And then the even like the flying monkeys, like the scene where the first flying monkey has the spell put on by Alphaba, and he starts like growing wings. It's crazy impressive. Like the
It looks
feather
good.
physics, and then there's a room full of all of the monkeys growing the wings, and it's really good stuff. So, um, yeah, I'm really excited for Wicked for Good, and yeah, loved it.
Yeah. Like I've said from the jump, anytime that I've talked about Wicked, like I think the only reason I'm not more hype on this movie is just because like I didn't have the vested interest in it going in. Like Wicked is one of those things where like I've seen performances from the stage play. I've never seen the full show, but I have watched like performances from it. Obviously, I'm aware of who Adina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth are and where they came from, and they're very talented. And I'm sure a lot of the people over the years have been very talented. But it's just one of those. Sometimes there's just something that doesn't strike your interest, and that just is what it is. And going into this movie, like I could have told you it was going to be excellent from the moment they got John M. Chu to direct it, because In the Heights was easily one of the best films of that year, and the amount of care and technical level and production that was put into that movie, moving that over to Wicked and what you could do with it, it's like, yeah, of course he's going to make a great film. I should be more excited, but I'm not. But it's going to be a great film, and it is exactly what I thought it would be, which is a great film. I don't think it quite tops In the Heights for me, but that said, that's not a denigration of the movie. It's an excellently made film. It's excellently performed. I mean, like Cynthia Erivo is the obvious one of like she's going to be great. She's going to kill this, and she does. But Ariana Grande is shockingly excellent. As long as he makes the correct career choices, this movie single-handedly could jump Jonathan Bailey to the A list, and he's great in the movie as well. Um, I mean, hell, the fact that he picked up a SAG nomination after doing literally no campaigning, and I honestly can't even argue with it outside of who didn't get in because he got the spot. Like, he's that good that there's a world in which he could have campaigned for an Oscar and got a nomination. Um, but even down to like in movies like this, the things that often kind of take it out for me is when you celebrity cast so deep that it starts to become distracting. And with the one exception being Jeff Goldblum, who I think is kind of just Jeff Goldbluming the wizard. He's not bad by any means, but it's definitely Jeff Goldblum playing the wizard. Um, whether it be Peter Dinklage, Michelle Yeoh, even Bowen Yang from SNL playing just one of the friends, they're also dedicated to their performances in the film, and they're also in it that it doesn't distract you, that you recognize the person that's on screen. They are clearly committed and going for it, and everyone cares. Um, I mean, there's a reason that the most negative thing anyone could say about this movie when it came out was just whatever your opinions are on various behind the scenes elements of real people's lives. And frankly, no, I don't care that Ariana boned SpongeBob. That's not my place.
Yeah.
That's their choice, man. Whatever. They're both great in the film. So who cares? Um but no, it's very, very good. And yeah, certainly more than I would have been going in. I look forward to seeing what they do with the second half. Um, I will admit I was that person that went and read a synopsis because I watched the end of this movie and I went, "What on earth could the sequel be to this?" And then I was like, "Oh yeah, it exists." So I read the synopsis of the second half. That shit is wild. Don't spoil it for yourself if you haven't. I'm so curious to see what they do with this.
Yeah, that's why I was glad I've already seen the full stage show. So 'cause
I'm so curious as
I
to
was
what
like,
they
I
come
don't
up
have to
with.
wait to know.
Uh, what do you think of the title? Does the title fit for
I
good?
hate it. I hate
Okay.
it. I think it's so dumb, dude. Just name it two.
It's like
Like,
we're scared. It's like we're scared of the number. We're scared of
is
part
this
two.
is this Fast and Furious? Like, what are we doing? Like, just name it Part Two. Like,
I don't know. Between that and like Mission Impossible moving away from Dead Reckoning Part One to the Final
all right.
Reckoning, it's like what?
Me and my girlfriend make fun of that every single time we see the trailer. We go, "The Final Reckoning 2."
It's like what? What's the point of the title change?
That
Like
was.
it doesn't.
I think they just at one
Uh,
point they realized Part One and Part Two was not a good marketing strategy for people that haven't seen Part One. They still want to capture those people that are like, "Oh, I haven't seen the first one," so they. I think it's like a
you know
ploy.
what though? I feel like we're at a point now in Hollywood. We're at a point now with like like film watching where attention spans are so fucked for so many people that it doesn't like Spider Verse wasn't released as a part one, part two technically, and people are still raging over that. So it's like whatever, man. Like
Like Marvel hasn't made a numbered sequel like since like
in
Iron Man
years,
3, right? Like
it's been
it's
years.
been 12 years. Like it's not gonna. And then when they renamed Infinity War Part One and Part Two, they were like, "Yeah, we can't do it. We can't have numbers." And then everyone kind of like in the industry was like, "You're right. No numbers. No more numbers."
Although I'm convinced with Marvel at this point, it's because there's so many of them. They're just hoping that people don't realize they missed a movie as they walk
Yes,
into the next one.
exactly.
I have a friend who he's not into like the Marvel movies, but it's a thing with him now where he'll see like every third Marvel movie, so he just has this really tangentially built point of view on the MCU. Uh, which it is funny. It's funny to hear someone try and describe what the MCU's like when their films are like Thor: The Dark World and Black Panther and Endgame, but not Infinity War.
I mean, at this
uh,
point, it's a lot to keep up with. Like, if you
it
didn't,
is.
if you didn't like grow up watching all of them, it's a chore to get through. Because I rewatched every single movie before Quantumania came out, and boy, it was an
And
effort.
for and all for Quantumania as well.
Exactly. So I was pissed at the end.
All right. What's your 16?
16 is kind of probably going to be controversial. It's Robert Zemeckis' Here, starring Tom Hanks and what's her name, Robin Wright. Robin Wright.
And thus we have the first movie that makes both lists.
Man,
For what it's worth, I didn't see it, so that was all his opinion for it being on the worst. So go ahead. Why is it also on the best?
well, I think a lot of people are hard on this film. Part of it, I think, is people are Robert Zemeckis haters. Robert Zemeckis makes movies to challenge himself. I think he doesn't make
That's fair.
movies for people like maybe like in the past. Yeah, he made movies for audiences. Like when he made Castaway, right? He made Forrest
Mm.
Gump. Um, But at this point, I feel like someone later in their career is like, I need to do something different. I need to switch it up. Have you seen The Walk with Joseph Gordon-Levitt?
Yes, yes.
Loved
And
I
that's
love
and
that
I like that one. That one's a
I
good one.
love that movie. And
Yeah.
um but he's made some stinkers. It's Robert Zemeckis. But I thought that from like a technical standpoint, this was so interesting. Like the idea, it's based on a comic that was adapted to a stage play that was then adapted to this film. Um, but just never moving the camera um, at all and then experiencing what, one, two, three, four, at least five different families experience like from this perspective, and the way they overlap everything. Like I think the editing is just really what makes this film great. Because if it was just like straightforward, here's the first family that lived here, because it does start like prehistoric times, and then it
Dude,
moves on.
I just have to say, I love that we have a perfect example right now of the duality of film and how the exact same thing can strike people differently. Because Austin, my panelist on the other show, he said literally the exact opposite of what you just said. Of maybe it would have hit better if it had cut down on some of what's there and gone linearly.
Nah,
And I love that the exact same thing can strike people two different ways. That is what's awesome about film.
people described it as dull. I think if it was in a linear storytelling way, it would have been dull, because
Mm.
you're like, it would feel more predictable, because you would feel like the normal beats of what happens to a family, the relationship starts, the marriage, the baby, the death. Like, it would feel more predictable, whereas this is jumping back and forth. And not only is it jumping back and forth between prehistoric and native, and people like the guy that invented the lazy boy, or
Mm.
the guy or the family where the father was super into aviation because it was brand new and he like could fly a plane and it was crazy, to when Tom Hanks was a teenager and growing up and falling in love, to the future with a black family. And there's a scene where they like have to like explain to him how to handle stops with police and stuff. It covers so many different things and then overlaps them visually, um, to show and highlight, like how these spaces intersect um, over time, and even like how essentially like how human and singular humans are, like how similar we are, even though we're so different, throughout time and culture and stuff. And then this movie does have some egregious CGI in it. Like, they use deepfake technology, and sometimes it looks really good, and then sometimes they decide, Tom, walk really close to the camera, and it's like, no, 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 it's okay. We don't need to see the close up. It's fine. Like, it's fine. But I thought in particular, Paul Bettany was really good in this. Like, I thought he gave the best
You
performance
guys
in
do
the
agree
film.
on that.
He was really good in it, and I probably one of his best roles that I've seen. I haven't seen a ton of Paul Bettany. Like, the most Paul Bettany I've seen is Vision, but he was
Yeah.
really good. I thought Tom Hanks was, was fine. He was probably a challenge for him to play like a 17-year-old version of himself, and then throughout his life. And Robin Wright, I think, follows Paul Bettany, because she gave a really good performance with her um, frustration and anger with the kind of complacency that Tom Hanks' character had in the film. And um, I was crying at a lot of the points during the film. I thought it really emotionally resonated with me, and I was kind of disappointed to see how um, kind of like mean people were about the film, because I feel like it's very sincere. Um, so yeah,
Mm.
it's yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I was gonna say, just because when you said like you haven't seen much of Paul Bettany, I was like, when was the last time he was in something? And actually, he had before here, he hadn't made a movie since 2020. He hadn't been in a project since he was in WandaVision in 2021. So
He's got that Avengers money.
yeah, he just only now he has two projects on the docket. He has a biopic where he's playing Andy Warhol,
That tracks.
and oh, okay, it's about Andy Warhol and John Michael Biscat. I don't know how you say that.
I'm not sure.
I'm butchering that poor man's name. And then he's apparently in a mini series adaptation of the stage play Amadeus.
Interesting. Yeah, the last thing I remember watching before like Civil or Avengers movies is him in Solo, and he was not too good in that. A little hammy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, no, he
honestly, he was a
wasn't.
little hammy in here. I'm not gonna lie. Like, but I think it worked.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. It's so interesting because I honestly the movie did so poorly that I heard almost next to nothing about it even when it came out. And as I said in the last video, I skipped it just because while I still have some semblance of faith in Zemeckis, the double whammy of Welcome to Marwin and then Pinocchio is just like man. So once the reviews were like mixed, it was like I will get to this if I get to it, and I did not get to it. So
Yeah, I knew Pinocchio
um
was a skip, and I haven't seen Welcome to Marwin, so
uh, Welcome to Marwin has some good ideas, but it just doesn't know how to go about it.
yeah, I'm sure people would say the same thing about here, but
That's fair. And maybe it is worth checking out. I have no idea then. Yeah, but I don't know. It didn't work. It didn't work. That and he went back into the Beowulf CGI thing, and but it wasn't like only partially, and it's like okay. Anyways, what is your number 15?
Y2K.
Okay. So this was I had tickets to go see this, and then literally I remembered, oh shit, I have a school assignment. So I sat outside the theater in my car doing the school assignment while my brother and sister saw it, and they liked it, but I did not see it.
No, I ended up loving it. Directed by Kyle Mooney was probably why
Mm.
I loved it so much. He's got such a unique sense of humor. I miss
He
him so
did
much from his time.
Brigsby Bear, right?
Yeah, I haven't seen Brigsby Bear.
Okay,
I think that
I
was
liked that one.
more.
So
Is that more like serious? I don't know. Like it seemed very
I would say it's got
strange.
a darker edge to it because of the premise of like a kid is kidnapped and raised in this like insane environment. But no, it was pretty funny. It was pretty comedic.
Yeah, but this one stars Rachel Zegler, Jaden Martell from the It movies, Julian Dennison from Deadpool 2, and what else is he from? A few other things.
He was in a Taika movie, right?
Yeah, I don't know, but I love Julian Dennison. I just watched another movie from I think it was this past year, or maybe the year before, called Uproar. And he is just, I love him so much. He's a great comedic actor. Every scene with
It
Julian Dennison is just
so
hilarious.
fun fact. One of the people in so like the vast amount of views that this show would pick up aside from random views on tags through YouTube is like a specific community of people. One of the guys in this community actually lives in the area where they shot the film, and he's a background extra in one of the scenes.
In Y2K?
Or in Uproar.
Oh, in Uproar. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, that movie's
yeah.
excellent. Really like that. Um, but Y2K is just like so
Oh, he was in Godzilla.
unserious. Oh, yeah, yeah. He's in the
He was
Godzilla.
Millie Bobby Brown's friend in Godzilla.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. But this film is just so unserious and it's so stupid. And I just love movies that are just like don't take it seriously. Like the premise is like, oh, it's you were at the Y2K party, before the New Year's Eve, right before the year 2000, and it's not just like robots are coming after to kill you. It's every piece of electronic anything, like not something with a computer chip, like just any type of tool that has power has somehow taken itself and turned it into a killing machine. And they're just killing everybody, and it's bloody and it's dumb and it's so funny, and I had such a great time with it. I there was probably 20 people in the theater, and I was the loudest person laughing. I was laughing at everything, and people were just like and I don't know, it was so funny, especially Kyle Mooney's like brief appearance in the movie. Very funny
Hmm.
stuff. Like, I feel like if
Yeah.
this movie hit streaming, it would be like if it was on Netflix, it would be in the Netflix top 10 like instantly. Not because it's
I,
like because people would love it, but like just because of who was in it, the fact that it's a
mm,
comedy, that it's kind of reverent. Like, yeah,
yeah, I feel like they got the release date wrong on this one because it came out in like December, but it's not. And maybe you can correct me. As far as I could tell, it's not really a Christmas movie. Obviously, it's on New Year's Eve, but like I feel like if they had put this out in October when people want to go see this type of movie, it would have done a lot better.
yeah, December
Because
6th,
it,
not the right
I
date.
mean, again, you've seen it, so you can correct me, but like trailer wise, tonally, it felt like it was striking maybe because Kyle Mooney's got a weird sense of humor. It was striking like a weirder version of what Happy Death Day or Freaky were trying to go for.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, and those did well in October. So I feel like that maybe would have been a better fit for it than like competing against Red One.
yeah,
I don't know. That's not much of a competition, but
fucking red one. Oh my god,
that was a movie.
that
Uh,
you could call it that.
from the makers of Fast and Furious. Uh, anyways, so we'll go ahead and move on then. My number 18 is another small film that got fucking buried, unfortunately. This was called The Order. So I don't know if you've heard of this. So the background on this movie is almost as interesting as the movie itself. So this movie, it's directed by Justin Kurzel, who, if you're looking for positive, famously, he did Michael Fassbender's Macbeth. If you're looking for a negative, famously, he did Assassin's Creed. Um, not everything works out. But it's from Justin Kurzel, who did Macbeth. It's written by Zach Balin, who also has an inconsistent filmography, but his best work includes King Richard and Creed 3. Uh, and this was originally picked up by uh, A24. Uh, it was originally owned and picked up by A24, and it was going to be like one of the films they were going to push around the time of Oscar season, alongside movies like Sing Sing. And then they got a hold of The Brutalist, and Sing Sing, obviously, we all saw, got buried, unfortunately. And this movie just straight up got dropped. It just lost distribution and got dropped. It was picked up by Vertical, which are basically a direct-to-DVD company that now minorly distribute films in limited release to make money. And only recently I saw it got picked up by Amazon MGM to distribute to Prime Video. They got to it after it had its theatrical release, so it'll be coming to a wider streaming service soon. But this movie, it stars Jude Law, Nicholas Hoult, Ty Sheridan, and someone you mentioned earlier, Journey Smollett. Or is it Smollett or Smollett? I've heard both.
I'm not sure.
Um, all right, but yeah, so it stars the four of them, and it's set in the 1980s, and it's about Jude Law plays an FBI agent who's relocated to like small town Midwest and winds up working with Ty Sheridan, who's a local cop, to go after this group called the Order, which are a sect of the KKK that are ultimate like white supremacists that are planning to actively start attacking and committing domestic terrorism. Um, if there is anyone out there who is nervous at the thought of Nicholas Hoult based off the roles that he's played being Lex Luthor, watch this movie, because this is where that vision is kind of coming from as the leader of this white supremacist group. And he is excellent in the film. He plays a hell of a villain. He's got that cold stare that I think really works. And this is based on a true story. So the character that Nick Holt's playing was a real person who committed the acts that the movie is showing you. And I just think it's a really, it's probably maybe the worst thing about it is because it is from the perspective of the cops. Like there is some maybe tropey stuff that you can claim that you've seen before, but I think it's all done really, really well. I get I get why it was dropped in favor of the Brutalist in terms of if this is our campaign for Oscars, especially politically, unfortunately, right now, this is a much harder sell than something like the Brutalist is. But it's still a really, really good film, and especially once it does get that Amazon release, if I would recommend everyone go check it out because it's really, really well done. Also, Ty Sheridan, who really hasn't been in much since the X-Men franchise fell apart. I didn't know he was in it when I went and saw it. I like saw his face and I was like, is that Cyclops? And, you know, no one was in the theater, so I pulled my phone out and was like, oh, it is cool. He's really, really good playing this like supporting local cop that, you know, in a city that's so small town that everyone will just kind of turn a blind eye because that's not a fight we want to pick. He's the one that wants to pick the fight, and I think he plays it with there's a great energy to like what he's going for. It almost feels like what they wanted to do with his Cyclops character, except those movies were bad and this one is good, so it works better here. Uh, sorry, he was in the bad ones. So yeah, I would recommend it. It's a good film.
Yeah, I'll check it out. I've heard a lot of things about it, but it's not on streaming. So
Yeah, it always sucks, man, when good stuff like this gets buried because of especially Oscar politics. It's like, come on.
yeah,
That said, I can't blame them because my number 17 is The Brutalist, so it got one place above. Um, I won't go too deep into this just because I know you said you haven't seen it. I don't want to spoil it for you or anyone who hasn't checked it out yet. But um, The Brutalist is, I think it's very, very good, obviously, and I think that like as a an art piece, I guess you would say, like if it wins any award, specifically like if Brady Corbett wins director or if it wins cinematography or if any of the actors win, I think that it's a well-earned win. And like on a technical level, this movie is very, very masterfully made. I do think it's too long. And while it's like it's not like there's an obvious portion of like there's not an obvious like here's a 20-minute segment that does nothing that we could cut out, but it is just the pacing of the scenes internally for me are too long. It feels like at times we hold too long on these conversations or we hold too long on whatever it is that we're doing, and it just especially in the first half, which is weird for me because most people prefer the first half to the second half because the second half is where all the dark shit really starts to happen. I thought the second half was actually better because the second half made up for a lot of the mistakes I thought the first half had, where retroactively some of the things that felt a little extraneous or that were held on for too long, that payoff kind of comes in the second half. And I think retroactively it makes certain elements of the first half better. Um, First off, if you have, I guess, to give the trigger warning for people, if you have experiences with drug abuse or sexual assault or basically anything on that dark scale that people would give a trigger warning for, this movie's going to activate it. Like it goes everywhere. And maybe that's why people aren't into it as much because it is so dark. But for me, thankfully, I've lived a life where I'm not personally hurt or triggered by anything more than the concept of those things existing. Um, so I can handle watching it, and it does improve elements of the first half of the film to me, but it is not a film for everyone just because of what it is, and I totally understand that. But that, like, and again, I hate to directly compare things, but like, especially compared to Oppenheimer winning Best Picture last year, where that was a 3 hour film where it was so well paced and it moved at such a solid pace that it not only earned its 3 hours for what it was, but it didn't really feel like 3 hours. You can feel it on this movie at times. And it's not that it's not grand enough to have earned it, it's just when it is this long and there are points where you start to feel the runtime, I think that's a negative. That said, all the stuff around it again is excellent. Obviously, the three nominated performances are excellent. I mean, Adrian Brody is a great lead. I hope his career revitalizes off the back of this because he's excellent. Um, Guy Pearce is another one whose career I hope is resuscitated from this. I mean, he plays such a great piece of shit, and I also like. Not long before I saw The Brutalist, I also saw Memento for the first time, and he's excellent in that 25 years ago. So I hope that he gets more work off of this because he's great. Um, and he plays a good villain in this. But even the smaller performers like um, Alessandro Nivola is in this. He does a great job, and specifically his accent work is incredible because he's an Italian playing a Hungarian who's forcibly trying to sound American, and just the little ticks of like how certain words are pronounced, because if you're not like an actor trained to fix your accent and you're trying to sound like something else, you would slip. Like those little eccentric thing, like that's really cool to watch. um the Who else? I believe her name is Rafe Cassidy, who was, I mean, to the general audience, she's probably best known for being in Tomorrowland 10 years ago. She's not done much else in between, but she plays Brody's niece in the movie, who is someone that is actively like suffering from the traumas she experienced in World War II. I think her performance is really strong. Honestly, sorry to the Swifties out there, or maybe congratulations to the Swifties. The person who gets fucked the most is Joe Alwyn. Not that he's bad in the movie at all. He's very, very good. It's just in a movie that has so much in-depth character writing, he's kind of written like a cartoon character at times. And he's like he's the Saturday morning cartoon racist villain, not the like nuanced racist villain that everybody else is in the movie. But yeah, overall, like I said, the writing for the most part is strong, but I think the writing is also its weakest point at times. But technically, I think Brady Corbett has crafted a really, really great film. And while this one to me wasn't the 10 out of 10 that a lot of people are proclaiming, I think if he can shape up on that screenwriting for the next go around, he's like 85% of the way there. Like he's really got a great eye for making an interesting film. Just yeah, get the script on lock a little more, and I think we're there.
Yeah, I like to hear that comparison to Oppenheimer, because Oppenheimer, you're right, doesn't feel long because of the pacing and how it's just like
Mm-hmm.
always chugging forward. So you saying that kind of makes me more hesitant to watch The Brutalist. And I just want to note that I don't like Adrian Brody. I don't know why.
Oh, that's
I don't like the guy. Maybe because he worked with Roman Polanski after he was convicted of SA
that's a hard
as a
way to
child.
start.
But like, I don't know. I've never been a big
I don't
Adrian
know. I
Brody
heard like because this Oscars race has genuinely become what bad shit can we dig up from people's past to like try and denote them for winning an Oscar. And I saw a small sect of people try and be like, he worked with Roman Polanski, and I'm like, they gave him an Oscar for that. You really think it's gonna affect his chances here? Like, you can't say he doesn't win an Oscar for this because he did that when they gave him the win for that. That's like, what? No. But you're right. No, that's fair. I think naturally I have a mentality that does lean more towards separate art from artist, but that's just because so much goes into a movie that
Yeah,
I don't want to destroy other people. But like on a personal level, not liking someone, that's fair. I'm not going to defend the guy's choices by
he
any
just
means,
seems like
but
a
just
dick.
as a um, as a test. No, you know who seems like a dick? Brady Corbett. I read an interview from that guy. That is like, there are times where I worry that I sound pretentious, and then I listen to him talk about his own work, and I go, "Oh, good, okay, I'm fine." Whew. Like, I'd love to sit at a bar and have a drink and talk about his opinions on other people's works, but if you bring up your own movies, I'm walking away. Like, I don't know. But all right, we'll move on. Keeping on the Best Picture train, a film that frankly is now looking like the front runner to win Best Picture, and I do by one place think it is slightly more worthy. My number 16 is Honora. Um,
This is not
Not
the
into it
movie.
or haven't seen it?
I've seen it.
Oh, so
I think
not
it's
into it.
extremely
Okay.
overrated. I think it's extremely
Okay.
overrated.
So obviously, I wouldn't call it the best picture of the year. In fact, when we get to the second half of the video, one of my top five is a best picture nominee. So that is what I would give the win to. But it's looking like Anora is going to win. And again, I can see it. This is another one kind of like The Brutalist. It's 20 minutes too long. And it's not that there's one individual section of the film that I think you could just hack off and we're good to go. Specifically in the second act, to me, when they're doing the slapstick thing, each individual scene feels like it goes on for too long. Like it's almost like we're on like when they're editing the movie, they had like the iPhone timer up and you're watching the stopwatch count down and we went like 3 minutes past when we should have with each scene, but just let it go and then we roll to the next scene. And it's not that like what I'm watching isn't entertaining. It's just if by the end of each scene I have this feeling of like, all right, can we move on, please? Can we okay, now we've moved on. All right, I'm out. Can we move on? That feeling does start to drag on you. However, I think the first act and the third act are exceptionally executed. I think this premise of like stripper Disney princess and like the fantasy of what that would be like is a really intriguing premise. And I think that Baker does a good job with the like excessive fantasy of what that would be like. And then in the third act, the crashing back down to the harsh reality and Yura Borisov's performance, I think, in the third act, almost to me is more of a standout than Mikey Madison. Just the subtlety and the face acting really, really worked for me. And despite all the roughness around the edges of the movie, when you get to that final shot where she just finally breaks down, it worked for me. Emotionally, I was affected. And so, despite the fact that the movie has a lot of rough edges, and it's not my personal pick for best picture, I can see where people may have been emotionally affected by it. And certainly I would say, again, despite the fact that if you are somebody who unfortunately has been affected by sexual assault and different topics like that, this is not the movie for you to watch because sex is very face forward in it. um like I think this is easier to stomach than The Brutalist, so I get why you would sort of get the edge over it. But I am curious to hear your take because I feel like this movie kind of became the one that a lot of people bandwagoned behind early on. So I haven't heard very many people who aren't as high on it.
Listen, I like the film. I gave it 4 out of 5. It's
Hmm.
just I don't think it's Baker's strongest work. I think the Florida Project is something that should be put on the pedestal that Honora is being put on. I mean, I think it has received its flowers over the years because it didn't get recognition, but like it was kind of cool to see that. It was very surreal to see that film, which took place like in Kissimmee, you know,
Oh yeah,
and like in Disney World and in the theater at Disney, like, and
yeah,
to think about, hey, they shot this right down the street, you know what I mean? So that movie just felt so real. Um, and especially with the child actresses, I think that was a really good focus for him. I just find some of Baker's work to be a little exploitative. And
fair.
he like the majority of his work is about sex workers in one way or the other. Like Florida Project, like obviously the mom is
Yeah,
what's the correct word? I guess just sex worker. Honora is a stripper. Tangerine is about also sex workers. Red Rocket's about a guy trying to get a girl to do porn. So and there's just been some conversations about, intimacy coordinators and how Sean Baker doesn't like believe in that. And like how him and Mikey and the guy that plays the Russian kid like made the decision like to not have one. And I think that's kind of like an unsafe way to have those kinds of like I don't think that, oh, we can just decide, because it's like the amount of influence the director has over these actors is heavy, you know
yeah,
what I mean? So like wouldn't he rather work with someone that doesn't want to have a intimacy coordinator? And I think that's a lot of pressure to put on young actors, female or male,
Mm.
And I just think I'm a little wary when it comes to his work that he's not. I want him to be on the side of the sex workers, but it's like like after like the years of the Me Too stuff and all this stuff, I'm still like hesitant to like trust this person, like to invest my like, oh yes, this person's work is like genuine and authentic for these people and not trying to exploit these people. Um, but when it comes to the actual film itself, Honora I thought was a good movie, and it was kind of like um, one of those one night movies where I know it took place over a while, but it was
Yeah,
like
but I get
had
what you're saying. The feeling of it is like this wild ride.
yeah, and it's I just didn't find it as interesting as more his slow pace, like the Ford Project, where it's kind of just like we're living in the life of these people. Whereas Honora was just like it was like a good time, or Scorsese's After Hours, where it was just like location to location to location. We got to find this guy. We got to do this. And I didn't
Mm.
think we spent enough time with Honora. Like, I don't think that we had enough time figuring out who this character was and why she was the way she was. And it was kind of more just reactionary stuff. So, yeah, that's why I didn't really love it as much as other people did. I'm surprised that it's like the front leader. But hey, if it wins over Amelia Perez, I'm happy. Don't care as long as it beats out Amelia Perez. I'm good.
It's very true. Um, yeah, that's interesting. I do think you make a good point about like his actual relationship to sex work and like that is a I think that's a very interesting and fair point that I hadn't really thought about. I think that's a good external conversation to have because you're right. Like I think the probably the most interesting discussion I saw on that was if you go look up actors on actors, they paired Mikey Madison with Pamela Anderson, who obviously very publicly has talked about like her experiences in the industry and feeling exploited. And Pamela Anderson's reaction to Mikey Madison saying like, "Oh yeah, no, like I forewent having a intimacy coordinator," was like you could almost see the fear in her eyes of like, "I hope you don't come to regret that later." And you could see like her motherly instincts kick in, and it's like, yeah, it is interesting. Like, is that something where in the future you'll look back on it and say like we made a wrong choice or that shouldn't have been our choice to begin with, or is she as a person in a place where she is okay enough, to have and also you have to question like aside from having an intimacy coordinator, how is he running the sets? Like, or is it a safe environment aside from that they felt they could forego it? Like, certainly when you're doing a film like this and you're consistently doing work like this, I think it's fair to ask those questions. And obviously, I mean, he's already openly said like he's written his next screenplay. It's apparently also related to sex work in some way. So like it will happen again, and I think he'll have more eyes on him than ever. So we will see.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. So then my number 15 is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Like that one. Never thought about
Not on
it.
your list, I'm assuming.
No,
No, which is fair. I
it's at
really like the
65.
I really like the trilogy. I really, really like the trilogy. So I was weary of this when they announced a fourth one. And then I was even a little more weary when they announced the director because as much as I actually did enjoy the Maze Runner films, and I've said I don't think any individual Maze Runner film is the best of that YA genre, but I think the Maze Runner to me might be the most consistent film series in that YA where everything is like all three of them are like a solid 6.5 to 7.5, and none of them dip worse than that. Whereas I think like the best Hunger Games film is better than that, but the worst Hunger Games film is worse than that. And whereas that is a trilogy that in and of itself is concise and that you can watch. So Wes Ball taking over Apes was an interesting pick, but one I was curious about. And I walked out really, really enjoying this film. I really, really enjoyed this one. It's not my favorite of them. That still goes to Dawn. And as of this year, I've seen every Planet of the Apes movie now. So I say that in totality. Dawn, I do think, is the best of all of them, including the original. But Kingdom is definitely up there. And I think while it's not better than Dawn, and depending on the day, it's not better than War either, I think it is good enough to sit with those films. And I don't know if Wes Ball is doing the next one because I know he's also working on Zelda. So I don't know if they're going to wait for him to come back or not. But I would like to see him get another shot at this because I think he can improve even further. In terms of within the film itself, I think this is the best representation of apes as characters that we've seen. I thought Caesar's character work in the other films was really, really well done, but the rest of the apes were very hit or miss. Like I remember seeing the third one, and one of the things I felt was like, it opens with his kid and his wife being killed, and I almost felt that that rung a little hollow because compared to the other apes, they were such non-factors in the films that aside from the sadness of like his wife and his kid are dead, like there's no connection to these characters compared to some of the others. Whereas like and I want to get the actor's name right. Here's dead air while I look this up because I want to give credit where it's due. But where is it? Peter Macon as Raka, like he's on screen for probably all of 20-25 minutes, but when he is taken out of the film, like I felt emotionally impacted. I was like, no, like I'm sad this character's not here anymore. And that to me is the real strength of this film is more than ever. I think it did a great job at taking the ape characters and really fleshing them out and making you connect to them and care about them um, in a way that the other films never fully did. Um, I also thought Freya Allen is the one. I mean, Bill Macy's in the movie, but Freya Allen is like the one real human. I've never seen The Witcher, so I had no exposure to her work prior to this. But I thought she did a really, really good job. I thought she did a great job, sort of, playing the secretive side of it while also kind of, I don't know if playing both sides is the right term because I think clearly you can see that you know she wants what's best for everyone the same way the apes do, but of course she is a human and humans are on the downturn right now, and so at the end of the day you have to stay loyal, I guess. I don't know. I think it's done good enough in this movie, but it sets up a really interesting thing going forward. And I hope that they keep her around because the continuous thing for these films is to change out the human cast but keep the ape cast. I hope that they keep her because I would like to see one of these films actually get to follow up on the human side of it in the sequel. Um, but yeah, and I think the visual work in the movie is incredible. Making the choice to almost exclusively shoot on practical sets while doing mocap is an incredible choice, and I think it looks really, really good. If it weren't for the fact that Better Man also exists, and I think the two ape movies are going to cancel each other out, I would probably give this the Oscar. Um, but yeah, because that's how that works. Unfortunately, that logic is how that works. There's two apes, so an ape won't win. But I think visually it looks incredible, and it took me from not just being a great movie in and of itself, but should they, when they continue this, because they have said they plan to, um, it makes me excited to see what is going forward more than I was, I think, excited walking into this, which I think is the best thing that a film can do.
Yeah, I went in with like tempered expectations because I just really love the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy so much. I haven't seen
Yes,
all the sequels. I've only seen the original and then the prequel trilogy. Um, but
most
I
of them aren't
was
worth your time.
I figured, but I'm just not. I, I was not like prepared. I was like we finished this. We had a good conclusion to the story. It was over. You know what I mean? Like that's what it felt like. And they were just like they're
Mm,
just trying to pump more money out of it. So I was walking into this with low expectations, and I kind of came out like, you know, the second two were directed by Matt Reeves. You know what I mean? And
mm,
Wes Ball is not Matt Reeves. Like
no.
he just the care and attention just didn't seem as heightened. And as great as the VFX are, like this is clearly the best VFX in any of the Apes movies. Like that scene with Rocka on the bridge, no spoilers, when he's in the water. Whoa,
Yeah.
that like the just the water going through
The
his
the
hair, and
water like
it's
running
incredible
over the
stuff.
effect is incredible. Yeah.
It was insane. And that was my favorite character, and that's why I'm sad because he was only in the film for like you said 20 to 25 minutes. And I just had a hard time connecting with Noah. Like I didn't like feel as invested in his story and his characterization as I did Caesar, because we literally grew up with Caesar. Like we, or not
Yes.
we, but like we watched Caesar grow up, and like we see his struggles and stuff, and we can sympathize with him because we see him from his birth to his death. Whereas like Noah is just kind of like, oh, I'm here. I'm like like he's like the son of the guy that is like important. I I don't even understand fully. And the way that they took Caesar's name and the way that Proximus Caesar uses it, like that's a clever idea in the sense of like commentary on the real world for how people
Yes.
use Jesus's name, right? But it still pissed me off. That would be like me that would be like me like existing during Jesus era, and like yeah, I love Jesus, and then like fast forwarding it to now and people are so hateful in his name. That's what it felt like. I was like sitting there and I was like, fuck this, no, this is not what Caesar stands for, this is bullshit. So like it got
The
that
movie
reaction
worked
out of
too
me.
well.
Yeah, but I just didn't love it, and then the human stuff really wasn't a fan of. I didn't like Frey Allen in it all too much.
Okay.
But yeah, so uh, yeah, like I like compared to as bad as James Franco as a person, I like that kind of stuff, that dynamic with Caesar. And then in the second one with in Dawn with, oh, what is that guy's name? I can't.
Uh, uh, Jason Clark.
Jason Clark. Yeah, that stuff is good. And oh my gosh, I'm
Woody in the
blanking.
third one.
No, I'm still thinking of the second one. Freaking Sirius Black.
Oh, Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman is so good in Dawn of the Planet of the
Oh,
Apes, and
he's
then
so good.
Woody Harrelson is phenomenal in the third
Phenomenal.
movie. So it's like it felt like a step down, and the
That
naming scheme
I
of
will agree.
Nova, I didn't
Even
think
as
she
someone who
deserved
liked her, I will
Nova.
agree.
I was like, oh, they're doing the Nova thing. Come on, guys.
Yeah,
What?
the marketing the Nova thing was a weird choice.
Yeah,
Internally in the film, I understood the logic of what they were doing, but like calling the character Nova in the marketing, I thought was a really, really weird expectation to set going in, especially
yeah,
since they'd already used it in this trilogy.
yes, exactly.
It
So
was a weird choice.
just kind of let down. Still like a 3 out of 5, but it just wasn't. It wasn't the first three, and then the first one's like the Rise isn't even that amazing of a film, but like
No, it's
I
fine.
I still enjoyed it more than Kingdom.
That I would say I liked it more than Rise. I think I would still say War is is better overall than this, but this is the easier film to like turn on because War is intense. Like, part of me also wonders. Sorry about that. Part of me also wonders if maybe this was toned down a little bit, like the expectation from the studio was to do something a bit more popcorny because like we no, we didn't see War the same day, but you were in the building when we saw it. Because I got the ticket into that marathon that they did,
You saw
where they
what?
did the three of them for War.
Okay, okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I
my
saw
bad, my
it.
bad, my bad. Yeah, yeah, no, for War. But like I saw it opening night, and I remember the reaction to that movie being like, it's good, but almost people were disappointed by the expectation of what the title War set.
Yeah,
And I wonder if maybe somewhere like Josh Friedman as the writer was given this direction of like make it a little more popcorny, like just go a little more back in the other direction. And I still think overall he wrote a good story, but yeah, you're right. Compared to War, where it's like I mean, it's almost like Shakespeare with apes at points. Like this is definitely the summer movie version of that.
Yeah.
That said, though, the fact that the guy who wrote this also co-wrote Fantastic Four does make me more excited for that than any of the casting.
Well, I don't know. Fantastic Four is gonna rock.
I hope. With that said, though,
That's
we'll
the
go ahead
only
and hop.
one I hope. I know. Sorry.
No, that's fair. I'm not, the Thunderbolts trailers give me hope, but we all know what a trailer can do. So, what's your 14?
14 is Dee Dee.
Okay. Yeah, this is another one where it was a last minute, like I could watch this or something else, and I just didn't get around to it. So tell me why I missed out.
Dee Dee. Well, it's set in 2008, the summer before he goes into high school. Directed by Sean Wang. It's kind of like a like an autobiographical type of movie, where it like mirrors his life in a way. So he, I'm not sure what part of Asia Sean is from. Let me see.
I'll look it up while you talk.
Yeah, but it's about his experience as an Asian America living in 2008, and just trying to like fit in and stuff. And I'm going to make another comparison to Superbad. I love Superbad, but
He
this is
is
that same type of
he's Taiwanese.
humor. Okay, Taiwanese. So like he lives with his Taiwanese mother and grandmother and his sister, and his dad is still like in Asia working full time and sending them money. Um, so he's just kind of like the only boy in his house, and he doesn't fit in with like a lot of the kids. Like he has a friend, um, but he ends up drifting away from them and trying to impress other kids and stuff. And it just hits so hard because it takes place in 2008, the year before he goes into high school, and I was the exact same age in 2008. So, and I relate
Okay.
to this character in so many ways as someone who is mixed race and who didn't quite fit in with one group of people, didn't fit in with the other group of people, and was ridiculed in both. Like, in having that kind of identity that you don't know where you belong. And same thing with him. Like, he would hang out with, like an Indian kid, and he doesn't have the exact same culture. Then he would hang out with like a black kid or a white kid, and kind of get mocked for being Asian and stuff. So um, it was just really well done on a comedy level, but also on an emotional level. Like to have a character who is just like frustrated with the world and really doesn't know why, and just like you're like a teenager and you have all this angst and all these like what seem like huge external problems. And the way that like he synthesizes in the script and the young actor that he chose, they just did a really excellent job with this.
Yeah, this is another one that I heard so much about. I unfortunately I missed it in the theater and I just never got back to it. But everyone has nothing but great things to say. So at some point, some way in the future, I'll definitely get back to it.
Yeah, I think it's on
Because
Prime. So
oh, perfect. That's easy then. Um,
yeah.
that's easy access. All right. So my 14 then is one of the other animated Best Picture nominees or Best Animated Feature nominees, Memoir of a Snail.
Oh yeah, I need to see this.
Uh, this is dark. this this movie's dark. I had no idea what I was going into. I literally read the title, Memoir of a Snail, and I was like, huh, all right, what am I watching? Like the life of a snail or something? I don't know, but I heard it was great. I heard that it was most likely going to get nominated. It was playing in theaters. All right, let's go watch it. This movie's dark. um, it is not about an actual snail. It's about a metaphorical snail in a woman who is kind of looking back on her life and sort of, I guess, emotionally dealing with all the hardship that she's faced in her life. And it is just this very brutal look at this like fictional life they've created for this character, but it's the most like one of the most honest things I've seen. Like when you think about like a biography of like an actual person's life, one of the things that we often talk about when those films get made is like, you know, the honesty of what's actually happening. Like very famously, like Bohemian Rhapsody is like scrubbed with the light, like just all the sanitization you could put on a film like that. Like it's not even close to the truth. Whereas this is a fictional person's life. I believe it was inspired by the director Adam Elliott's like real life, but for the most part, it is fictionalized. But it is such a brutal, honest look at the life of kind of a societal misfit who already on their own doesn't fit in with society, but separately, um, like separately has experienced things that would deter them from connecting with society. But unlike nowadays where I feel like when we look at people that are sort of alienated from society, the most often thing we look at are like incels, and we kind of go to the more like making fun of that type of, which to be fair, there are some incels that deserve to get made fun of, but we don't often look at these people who are kind of on the outskirts of life with a sympathetic light, and that's what this is trying to do. And I think it has a really interesting perspective, and it's very 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 funny, which I think helps kind of the darkness go down a little bit easier. And the vocal performances, mainly from the three leads of it, Sarah Snook, Cody Smith McPhee, and Jackie Weaver, are excellent. Um, it's like I said, it is not for everyone. Again, if you are somebody who has unfortunately had experiences in life where some things in films may affect you, it's worth looking into what's in the movie, just to make sure it's something you're comfortable watching. But if you can watch it, I think it is a perspective on life that is unique and well worth listening to. And I think it does a good job at making the viewer self-reflective as well, but in a good way. So yeah, definitely would recommend it. No hope in hell of winning the award, but still worth checking out. And I'm glad it got nominated. I'm glad it got nominated because it exposes it more than anything else. But yeah,
Yeah, I've only heard
all
good
right.
things about it.
Yeah, it's great. I don't know if it has like a streaming service yet or wider distribution, but I don't think so.
I don't think so.
All right. So then, what is your number 13?
Monkey Man. So,
Ah,
speaking of
okay.
monkeys.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, have you seen it?
I did. So this is my version of what you said for a few of mine, which is I saw it, I liked it, but I didn't love it.
Yeah, I kind of just like fell in love with like the kinetic energy of it, like Dev Patel's
Mm.
direction. Like it kind of is like propelled forward the entire time, and it's just very gritty, and it's just like a fun action movie, and it's a good revenge story. Those are some of the best types of action movies. Um, and I think it's just kind of like simple to the point. It knows what it wants to be. And it's just very satisfying to watch. And it has such great fight choreography. And I think like people compare it to John Wick. And I think it is kind of like, Dev Patel's John Wick, but it has a lot more depth to it than a John Wick movie. And I think it could have been better explored with its themes. But when it came to like the emotional aspects, I think it really worked. And this is one of the movies that came out pretty early in the year, so this was in my top 10 originally. But it's kind of just like sunk farther down when I've seen more movies. But I still think it's very good, and it's worth your time if you haven't seen it yet. So that's another one that's on Prime, and I'm excited to see what Dev Patel does next because I thought this was really impressive.
Yeah, as a director, and to be fair, as a writer to some extent, I thought he did a really, really solid job with it. For me, I think it's just, and you're right. This is I would say I don't think it's like directly like a John Wick type film, but I think it's somewhat of a hybrid style wise between like a John Wick film and then like the Indonesian Indian action movies. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. Um, I am a little burnt out on like the high volume of these types of films that we've gotten over the last few years. And really the only thing I can say is compared to like the high volume of Liam Neeson-esque action films that were all emulating Taken that we got in the 2010s, these are consistently better. Like generally these movies are consistently better than the movies that were emulating Liam Neeson movies and Liam Neeson movies themselves. But yeah, this one went under the like it was good, but it just something about it didn't quite hit me in the way that others that I saw this year did. Actually, now that I look at it, I don't know if any film that's like this year made it onto my top list. No, no, not really. None of the ones I saw this year were like that good compared to some of the ones I've seen in the past. But definitely it was a good one. Where was it? Like I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Like it's a good movie and it's one that I would recommend to people, especially if you're into this type of thing. Um, but yeah, something about it just didn't fully work for me. And in terms of exploring the themes, I think that's really what would have made it stand out to me is just if they had gone a bit deeper into it, because that is not something, and specifically the angle that this movie's taking when approaching India, that's not something that we do see very often. Um, I mean, specifically when they go into, and I forget the name of the group of people. I'm pulling it up. uh Hijra. I probably mispronounced that wrong, but the group of uh, intersex or transgender warriors, like what an interesting thing to put in there. And I don't know if this was the intent, but I love how it is kind of a fuck you to the people that have this like woke thing that they feel the need to promote, because this isn't woke. It's existed for hundreds of years. It's like a cultural piece of India. And I think specifically their action sequence in the third act, I thought that was badass. Like that's the unique perspective and unique thing that I want these films to try and do. Um, so yeah, I think if it had gone just a little bit deeper, I think I would have been into it a bit more, like you said. But certainly, I can appreciate his eye for direction. And again, I would like to see what he comes up with next because, listen, man, any good director is a director worth taking a look at. And also, shout out to Jordan Peele for seeing to it that this gets released in a theater because that's where
Yeah.
it should be seen.
Yes.
Like he's got the right idea. Movies like this should go to theaters. They shouldn't go to Netflix. Another like action film like that I saw this year was on Netflix. It's an Indonesian film called The Shadow Strays. And I watched it simply because the director of it is doing Nobody 2. So I was like, oh, let me watch like his precursor work prior to Nobody 2 coming out later this year. And like that movie's good, but that's another film where like if I could have seen that on a big screen like I saw Monkey Man, it may have almost had more impact. Very, very well done. But yeah, Monkey Man's good. I respect it. It's a good pick.
All
All
right.
right. Then I'll go on to my 13, which is Saturday Night. Um,
Yep, I just mentioned how I wanted to see this.
yeah, no, it's good. I won't go too deep into it. I mean, obviously, it's all semi based on real stories, so there's not much to spoil. But for me, this one is simply the expansiveness of the cast and the fact that all of them are playing a real life person. This in and of itself could have become an SNL sketch really quickly, and it could have been a bad SNL sketch really quickly. And Jason Reitman does a great job at making sure that it doesn't. Um, all the performances in this are excellent. Nobody feels like they're playing a parody of who they're playing. They feel like they're playing the character. Um, I mean, I'd say the one major downside is I just feel like in general the women don't get enough standout moments. Now, unfortunately, maybe that's true to life of how the set was run, given it's the 70s. But the
Yeah.
actresses that play the women in the movie, I think, are all doing a really, really good job, especially when you do the comparison of like them to the real person. But outside of Rachel Sennett, who plays Rosie Schuster, none of the actual actresses who are on the show get very much to do in the movie. But that said, Gabrielle LaBelle is a great lead. Rachel Sennett, who I'm hot and cold on depending on the film, I thought she was excellent in this, and she fit the energy of it really well. Of the ones, the ones that are playing celebrities, Corey Michael Smith as Chevy Chase was great. I mean, it really, really stand out and probably gets the most to do character wise. Dylan O'Brien as Dan Aykroyd was a great choice. I thought he really did a great job at kind of becoming all the stories you've heard. Lamorne Morris as Garrett Morris, no relation, was a great choice as well. Nicholas Braun playing two roles, Andy Kaufman and Jim Henson, which they have said was not intentional. I forget who the actor was, but somebody dropped out at the last minute, and Braun was just like, I could do it. So they went with it. I thought he does a good job. The only person in the cast who stands out in a way that I don't think was positive, because there's so many in here that work. I mean, I'm just reading through the cast list. Like Finn Wolfhard and his little bit, I thought did a good job. Cooper Hoffman's great as Ebersol. If anyone, speaking of, we were talking about comedies of earlier, if anyone was a fan of No Hard Feelings, Andrew Barth Feldon's in this in a small role. He's great when he's on screen. Willem Dafoe's in this. J.K. Simmons is in this. Who else? Matthew Rhys plays George Carlin. He's good. Like, there's so many actors who just get these quick in and out cameos that I think do a really great job. Matt Wood, who they cast as John Belushi, he's the only one for me that slips into this is kind of SNL parody. He's the only one. But the fact that all but one did it is excellent. Yeah, great film. Outside of that, there's not really much more to say than it's well written, it's funny. This one did get a little bit more of a mixed response, and I think that is just, does the humor connect with you or not?
Yeah, I'm excited
All
to
right.
check it out now. That's on Netflix.
Absolutely. And then we'll move on to our final one for the episode. Tyler, what is your number 12?
My number 12 is Sing Sing.
That's a punt.
All right, then.
That is on to the second half of the video, which means we'll go on to my number 12, which is Better Man.
Have not seen it.
Yeah. Look, America. Let's talk.
No one wants to watch this fucking movie in America, okay?
Let's talk. I know you don't know who Robbie Williams is. That's fine. My family's Irish. I understand just enough about English and Irish culture to have known who he was, but I'm not going to act like I've heard a bunch of his music. We get it. TikTok, we've heard you. You don't know who he is. So look at it this way. Put away the fact that it's based on a real person, okay? Take all that residual love that you guys have for The Greatest Showman. A love that personally I don't understand because I think the movie's fine. But America on a whole, you loved The Greatest Showman. So take all that residual love you have for The Greatest Showman, walk into this movie, and just imagine that this isn't a real person. This is a fictional biopic about a pop star. And you're going to have a hell of a time. And then at the end of the movie, when they show you pictures of what they were recreating in the movie, and you go, oh my God, that's a real person, you have a fun Google search. Stop being so fucking negative, people. Just, who cares? It's a good movie. It's a really well-made movie. I say this as someone who thought The Greatest Showman was incredibly overrated. Michael Gracie does a much better job here as a director, and I think he really makes this biopic work. I think both the younger actor who's doing the mocap for the character and doing a lot of the vocal work, but when Robbie Williams does take over and start performing as well, I think it's all really, really well done. I think the supporting cast, which is mostly smaller British actors, I think do a great job with the material. And the movie feels like it's trying to go for that Bohemian Rhapsody Rocket Man style, but it goes deeper than even Rocket Man did with Elton John. Like, it really doesn't try to hide the fact that Robbie Williams was a piece of shit at one point in his life who got way too sucked up in the fame and wanting the fame. And that vulnerability is what makes the movie super easy to connect with, because you can really see how he wound up the way that he did. And you can also see, even in the way the film's portraying it, the regrets that he has as a person about the choices he made. And that is much more interesting than your average bland musical biopic, right? Compared to, like, I don't know, the first one that I can think of from this year was Bob Marley, which was fine, but that's such a, like, outside of Kingsley Benadir's performance, that was such a basic biopic that was filled with info I could have Googled about Bob Marley. There was nothing to it outside of his great performance. Whereas this has the great performance and it has the depth that I think you would want out of a movie like this. So again, America, go to whatever streaming service it pops up on. Just forget that he's a real person. Because honestly, I think the marketing fucked that up too. Like, the VO that's in the trailers of him, like, I'm Robbie Williams, pop star, and they're showing like pictures of the real Robbie Williams. None of that's in the movie. Like, the VO is in the movie, but none of this like fourth wall breaking, like, I'm a mega pop star shit is in the film. They just really fucked up the marketing bad. And it is a movie that I think is truly worth you checking out. Not you specifically, but you as well if you want to.
I am going to eventually, simply the fact because of the visual effects. Like I watch a lot of Corridor Crew, and when they covered it, they
Mm,
had the VFX supervisor from the movie on, so they talked about how a lot of the difficulties that came into producing this, and like
yes.
how sometimes they had to like completely recreate lens flares that were natural lens flares on set, so they have to comp out the guy in the mocap, and then they have to put him back in, and then they have to recreate the lens flare and put it on top of that, and then there's a scene where he's like shaving his head, and like
Yes.
they had to animate him shaving his head, which is like it doesn't seem that complicated, like if you don't think about it, but it's way more complicated to achieve from an animation standpoint. So that's
Yeah,
really
'cause
why we
then you
should
have to get
see
like
it.
even the hair follicles coming off the back as he's shaving. Like, there's so much more that goes
Yeah,
into it.
yeah. So, and then they talk about how many like outfit changes he has, and they have to like actually get. They had real costumes in person for all of these costumes that he had or outfits, and then they digitally recreated all of them. So, from a visual effects standpoint, I'm excited to watch it. From a musical standpoint, I'm excited to watch it. I do think it's weird to make a movie about someone that people don't know and to make it a chimpanzee, like the idea of like, oh, like let's familiarize the audience with this person by giving them a chimpanzee, so they don't even have like a frame of reference visually for what they're supposed to look like,
Mm.
so that was kind of a weird decision, but like obviously it got people talking about the movie, not enough to go and actually see it because the box office returns were abysmal, but I'm still going to
Yeah.
see it. Just if they need to drop it on some kind of streamer, and I'll check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if Paramount retained distribution in America, then it'll go to Paramount Plus, although I could see them not, just based how it performed. Paramount also had a bad year last year. Not a great year for them. So yeah, that is my number 12. And that is where we will conclude this video at almost exactly the 2 hour mark. Guys, tune in a couple of days from now. We'll be back with the top 11 in our best of 2024. And just to cover again, this is why I like. This is why I want to do like 22 films, because it gives us a wide breadth of films. So far, we only have 3 crossover. We have Challengers, we have Wicked, and we have Sing Sing. Those are the only crossover we have. So those will make the proper list at the end. But we have many more films to go through, and hopefully a few more similar films. But until then, man, anything else to say, or are we done here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that we got to talk about a lot of these movies that maybe I wouldn't have even considered some of them that you brought up. So they got some new ones on
Yeah.
the watch list. So I'm excited to talk about some more next time.
All right. Well, until then, guys, tune back in a few days. See you then.